All right. Good night, everybody. I said it again.
Good
I think
night. Talk to you later.
I think a couple weeks ago I said good night, everybody. And this is just what's happening in my life is everything feels backwards and upside down. So we're just gonna roll with it. Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome to Talk Openly. It's fantastic to be here. My name's Jack, and I'm here with my wonderful friend Daniel.
Hi, Jack. Long time no see.
I know. Long time no see. We took a week off last week. I'm excited to hear about all the things that are happening for you. But we are going to talk tonight. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about this concept of negativity bias that I've been hearing more about lately, and I find it very relevant to the experience of my mind. So I'm looking forward to talking to it with you, Daniel.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm sure that we'll have plenty to talk about when it comes to that. It's a definite feature of human existence. At least
There
my
is.
mine sounds like yours as well. Yeah, well, what's been going on? My goodness, I can't even keep track of everything that's going on,
Right?
Jack. It's things are spinning quickly and all kinds of stuff moving.
Yeah.
I'm staying pretty busy between work and lots of family stuff and lots of work I could call it for the Dharma Center as well. Things staying busy there as well. So I don't think it's busyness in a bad sense, it's just like the days are full.
Yeah.
They start super early in the morning and then they like go until late and man alive.
Yeah.
I did have a cool dreaming experience though I wanted to share with
Oh,
you.
interesting. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. It was really cool. So it was I I was dreaming that I was lucid dreaming.
Hmm. Whoa.
Yeah, it was really
Okay.
it was a trip. So like here I am, I'm in this dream. Something I recognize that something's a little off, and I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm dreaming. And so I looked at some text and I saw like and I looked at it, read it, and then I looked away and then I looked back at it and it had changed. And I was like, oh, I'm dreaming. And so then
Mm,
I started interacting with the dream characters in a different way, and it was fascinating, right? The whole thing. And then I woke up.
yeah.
But
Wow.
I was dreaming that I was lucid dreaming. It was a strange sort of double. I don't know how to explain
Yeah.
it. It was like Inception.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if it was. That's really incredible. What do you make of it? Like what any
Not
thoughts?
much,
Yeah.
except it was interesting that the one thing that I remember sort of vividly is that the people, the other people who were in the dream, as soon as I recognized that I was lucid dreaming, there was this sort of like I was perplexed, like why can't I make them do what I want them to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if they're projections of my mind or whatever, they're like like how come I can't get in there, and I can't make
Right.
them, like they were still being and doing whatever they wanted to be and do. So
Right.
my influence was minimal at best. I was simply aware that I was dreaming and yeah, and I there was some sort of like, oh, I wonder if that's a bit how life is, right? It's all sort of, like it's all mind generated in some sense, and
Sure.
I still have no control or insight into the others,
Yeah.
so
I'd be
yeah,
curious to learn more about dreaming from a Dharma or kind of Buddhist sense. I've heard snippets here and there, like um I know that it's possible to visit like different Buddha fields in your dreams is
yeah.
what I've heard. And that sounds really magical.
I would love to talk to some teachers, like just
Yeah.
face to face. I don't know what I would ask them really, but I feel like it'd be nice to just say, "Here I am, teach me."
Yeah, for sure. And I bet they would.
I bet they
Um,
would.
I have had a couple dreams about Lama. I've had a couple dreams about the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
Um, and they've been really fascinating and mostly more about the tone of the dream rather than anything that specifically happened. Except there was this one Dalai Lama dream that I had that was so beautiful and fascinating. I was on the banks of this river, this just incredibly, just like powerful river, gushing river. And and you could tell there were like mountains in the area. And down this river comes the Dalai Lama in like a canoe. And he's standing in this canoe coming down the river. And behind him are all these other canoes. Um, and in my mind, I knew that they were refugees. They were these people that were, going with the Dalai Lama to safety. And then I woke up and I was like, well, that seems profound. um, and it was somewhat early on into my dharma training, so it felt really encouraging and just and kind of lovely. So yeah, I
That's
think yeah.
yeah, it does. It sounds really beautiful. I went grocery shopping with the Dalai Lama in a
That's
dream.
awesome. What'd you get?
I don't remember. But all I do remember is he was driving, and so we park in his garage afterward, and his cat hopped in into the car as I was getting out, and he was like, "No, no, the cat doesn't belong in the car. It gets hair everywhere, or something like that."
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it was a funny, friendly little dream.
That's really sweet. It is kind
Yeah,
of like yeah, like a gentle presence, kind of, um, yeah, not nothing too like major intervention, but just kind of like, yeah, here
yeah,
we are doing
yeah.
life
That's
together.
right. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Saving refugees, going grocery
Right,
shopping,
right.
that kind of stuff.
All of the above. That is what we're asked to do in
Yeah,
our training is kind of all of the above. We have to,
that's right.
liberate all beings, and we also have to live our individual lives.
That's right. Yeah, no, no,
That's the
exactly.
training.
Exactly that. Boy, I had a fun experience this morning. So, I was supposed to go work out with my daughter this morning, but she bowed out. She was too tired to go. And so I headed over to the temple because I was like, "Oh yeah, this is fantastic." I got time and I'm just gonna go and meditate. So I did, I sat down for a nice long sit, and I had the intention of exploring boredom. I plan on talking about it next month at in a Dharma talk a little bit. And
Nice.
so anyway, that was sort of the topic, if you will, for the meditation. And oh man, I'm just sitting there and like time's just going on and on and on, and like whatever, it's good, it's all good. And then there was some sense of like how still everything was, and yet there's still change and movement because the temple was like creaking and groaning and stuff, is like shifting. And then like towards the end of my meditation, all of a sudden the front doors, which are locked, closed and locked, they start like shaking, like,
Whoa.
he's like trying to get in through the front door. And I was like, it startled me. And then I saw them like walking around the building, going back and forth. And we've had some trouble with people at the temple recently,
Right.
some threats made against the temple. So my mind kind of exploded. I was like, I wonder if that's, a
Totally.
troublemaker or what.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, don't let it trouble your meditation too much. So I just, I just went back to meditating, and then it was over quite soon after that. And I went out. It was actually a Sangha member who was looking for another Sangha member. They were going to do some painting together.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, that's great that like I feel like of course that would be one of the first things that entered your mind is like, oh my gosh, what if it is that person, like
Yeah,
that danger. But then you allowed your training to come in and stabilized your mind. So that's wonderful.
I did think to myself, I thought I started kind of laughing a little bit. Like I thought, well, if it turns out that it's a troublemaker who comes in and they actually make it inside, first of all, the whole place was locked up. So I
Right.
was like, I wasn't too worried about it in that sense. But I thought, well, if somehow they got in here and they were intent on causing trouble, uh, the first thing I can just imagine them walking through, and it didn't actually matter if it was a troublemaker or not. I thought, I want to tell that person, like, you are a really wonderful meditation object.
Mm,
You
yeah,
know, like, like they were or meditation aid rather, like it was really helpful actually to notice how even in like what appears to be, in complete stillness, there's still a lot of movement and unexpected things can happen.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fun stuff, and who knows? I don't know. I don't have any other interesting, exciting stories. What about you?
Yeah, well, in terms of like my life practice training, there's a lot going on. I'm um as you know, I'm in the process of finishing school, and with that, I'm, looking for new jobs that are with the advanced degree, the social work degree. And in addition to all that, I'm moving. Um,
Yeah,
so it's
just little stuff.
just little stuff, just little stuff.
Yeah.
And also a friend of ours, husband is in the hospital for pretty
Oh
serious
gosh.
medical stuff. And there's
Yeah.
just like kind of all the things. But yeah, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about negativity bias tonight, and I'll dig into it a little bit more when we get into that conversation, is I'm just noticing like how much good there is about what's going on in my life, and yet my mind is so overwhelmed with stress. And for good reason, right? It's like I don't think that, the Dharma is telling us that we should never be stressed. I think Dharma,
Definitely not. I haven't read that anywhere.
I haven't read that anywhere. Yeah. And of course, as we develop our skills and in our training, um, we do become more adept at managing stressful situations. But this is a stressful world. Our, samsaric existence is stressful. And so I'm kind of a little bit realizing that like I've had it in my head that, okay, once I graduate, like there's been a little bit a big part of myself that's been like, once I graduate, things are gonna be chill.
Classic, classic, self-deceit.
Right? And I'm kind of realizing that that's not going to be the case. And in fact, in some ways, it's going to get more complicated. I'm going. I've been working in kind of social services field for a long time, but I'm stepping into a role where I'm going to have a lot more responsibility, um, and a lot more like state issued power, basically.
Oh, okay.
Because I will have the ability to be able to diagnose people with mental health conditions, and also, if needed, um, if there's like a safety issue, to like have them detained, right? There's a lot of responsibility
Yeah.
there, that uh, I really have not had to personally do that yet. In some ways, I have. Um, but I've been really supported in that. Um, but now I'm going to be stepping into the role where it's like, okay, I have to make some of those kinds of decisions.
You're
Um,
gonna be in the middle of it.
I'm going to be in the middle of it. Yeah, I'm going to be in the middle.
Jack, I can think of no better person than you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You got the right mix there of that compassion and also that no nonsense. I'm not gonna put up with it stuff.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you're right. I think this is exactly the place where I should be. It's the role and skill that yeah, I've been developing so over the
Yeah.
years. So I'm ready, but also nervous about like the new responsibilities. And and the two jobs that I think I'm pretty confident that I might get. One is for an oncology social worker, and the other is for a behavioral health consultant within primary care. And uh and so those feel like really big. They feel really big, it's
Yeah,
for the
they
last
are big.
they are,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm just kind of like, yeah, I'm anxious but excited, and also recognizing that, like, oh, it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier, but I do feel more confident as things go on. And so it doesn't get easier, but things change. We continue to develop.
Yeah, we continue
Yeah.
to develop and increase our capacity and familiarity and all
Yep.
of that. And with that, maybe it at some point eases a little bit in the sense that, like, at some point it'll be old hat, whatever it is that you do, like you'll have all the sort of initial experiences under your belt, you'll have learned a lot, and even if it doesn't get much easier, at least, that uncertainty is gone, or a lot
Yeah.
of it gets washed away.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, that's an interesting thing about like dharma too, is that, like, we are on this path that is um it's somewhat kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Uh non-circular, linear. It's somewhat linear, right? Like, it's a gradual path. And yet also at the same time, like we've talked about before, it's somewhat like a labyrinth. Like, we're gonna keep coming back to the same issues. But what's interesting is that, each time I come back, now that I'm on this path, I feel like I'm seeing it from a different angle, and I'm seeing it with a little bit more wisdom. I
Yeah.
think I can
Yeah.
say that
Yeah,
now, you
yeah,
know?
more clarity, right?
Yeah.
Better understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where it was like, when before being on the path, I would run into the same issues over and over and over again. And it would be so terrible because I would, every time I'd get out of kind of like my crisis point, I would feel like, great, now this is it. Now this is life. And this is how it's going to be, like, permanently. And then,
Yeah,
of
little
course, it would go,
eternalism.
right. And then, of course, it would, snap back, and I would be like freaked out again and feel like,
Yeah.
what the hell,
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, there's a little bit more, that my wisdom mind is illuminating a little bit more.
Mhm.
And I can see kind of like, when I come back to those same issues or stressors, it's like, that's a little bit different now. So yeah, I think that's maybe what happens, is like, all the stressful things are still happening. And in fact, like, you look at someone like Lama, like, Lama does not have a stress-free life. He has so many different projects and responsibilities. Like, he is a busy man, and a lot of
Mhm.
people are looking to him.
There's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure. And so, I don't think that it's not stressful, but he himself, is able to remain still and present within it. So yeah, I look forward to when we all kind of have that mind kind of blooming within us, that we can be in the midst of all the chaos that our lives bring us, and really be able to engage. It's exciting to see, I think.
Well, it's interesting because that it does speak when you say things are different when you approach them, the same sort of issues or whatever show up, and they seem different. I think largely that is, in fact, a measure of increased capacity. And I remember talking to Lama about that. I was like, man, like I got a lot on my plate, like a lot, and it used to wig me out. I would be so stressed out and anxious that I would feel like overloaded. I'd want to escape. I would shut down. I would, not be capable of handling it. And that was a small percentage of what's on my plate now. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah,
my capacity has grown, but I'm able to stay with it, and for the most part, and not get um it- too worn out by it, and
yeah,
and keep some even keel. And I asked it, and then he's like, "Yeah, the practice is working." And I said, "Is that, like, is that how you're capable of doing like you've got a lot, right?" He's not a spring chicken either, right? And he's got a whole lot going on, and he has so much energy, And even at the end of a long day, he can still be in it, right? And he's still teaching and he's still caring and he's still helping and doing. And he totally credited his regular practice with that, right? That it just keeps increasing your capacity. I think in some sense I think it may be a bit of a misnomer to suggest that it's actually increasing our capacity.
Mm.
I think in many ways it's decreasing our resistance.
Hmm. Yeah, say more about that. I'm curious about that.
Well, so when we're lost in samsara, we're at odds with reality. We're perpendicular to the stream or trying to fight it going upstream or something like that, right? And that's hard, right? And it takes a lot of effort, but you can't really do it. Whereas
Yeah,
when you align yourself with reality, right, instead of fighting it, trying to project your own thing onto it and get what you want out of it, instead, a little bit of the going with the Tao sort of aspect of things. Um, then then it doesn't take as much, right? You're still moving. You're just moving in alignment with the way things are.
for sure. That makes a lot of sense. And it also it reminds me of the meditation I just did before we got together tonight. I did my 24-minute sit, shamatha, and my object of focus was actually the image of our teacher of
Oh,
Lama
yeah.
Jinpa. And I what I try to do when I visualize uh our guru or one of the deities um is not just focus on the image as like a kind of a 2D image, but like, what are the qualities that that being has? And so I was, yeah, just reminded of these qualities of presence and compassion and something that happened while I was doing that and reminding myself of Lama, his image, but also uh his presence, is that I felt my own kind of like into like this, almost like this physical and mental like intensity where I'm like on guard and kind of like waiting for the next the next shoe to drop. It really just sunk in.
Yeah.
And I felt very much just like what you said, where it was like less resistance and more kind of like, oh, that's just natural.
Yeah.
How is it that that peacefulness is natural when most of the time I feel totally like tense and, and like,
Well, that's the conditioned self, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, without a doubt. I love that aspect of these of the visualization practices. One that, like you were saying, it's the qualities actually that because that's what we want to embody ourselves are those qualities. And so overly focused on the visualization aspect of it. I mean, the visual aspect of it, if you think about it, is usually a way of symbolizing the qualities, right? So like Tara and her outstretched leg, right? It's because she's ready to spring into action, and that's a quality, right? And so if we want to embody that quality, it's helpful to visualize it because visualizing it reminds us of the quality, but you can also just go straight to the quality itself. And I
yeah,
love what you said about how that aspect actually shocks me every time. That other part where you feel as a result of the practice, you actually feel that embodiment, right?
yeah,
That shift where you're like, whoa, what has happened? Right? Like, wow, I came into this feeling a certain way or, you know, aligned a certain way, and now I'm realigned in a different way.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
really magical.
It is
But it's
totally magical.
the real
Yeah.
magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I love it.
hell yeah. Well, let's check out some Lojong slogans. What do you think? We've been talking about mind training in the form of shamatha and all the things, but let's do some Lojong.
All right. I am down to do some Lojong. Let's do it. I'm
Yeah.
pulling up the random Lojong slogan generator on Lions or at dharmacenter.org. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to press the button. Let's see what we get.
Right. All right. So let's see number 23, which sounds familiar. I feel like maybe we have seen this one before. Always practice the three general principles. So Choyam Trungpa says, This slogan is a general description as to how we can practice the Buddha Dharma according to the three basic principles of Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. It is connected with a sense of keeping the discipline of all three yanas, Hinayana mindfulness practice, Mahayana benevolence, and Vajrayana crazy wisdom, all at the same time. And then we also have from Traleg Kyabgon, this commitment relates to our motivation to practice mind training. If we recognize from the beginning that Lojong is a powerful and beneficial practice, we'll commit ourselves in a genuine and continuous way by retaining a sense of impartiality and guarding against distortion. So the three principles, according to Charlotte Gavbone, are: one, remember to value your commitment; two, refrain from distorted forms of thinking; and three, refrain from falling into partiality.
What do you think that last part is, the falling into partiality or retaining a sense of impartiality?
Well, I see that it's opposite, I think, is equanimity. So equanimity is what we're
I
training
see.
to, which is to not be biased in favor or against um, anything.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that the thank you for that. That actually I think that is the answer to the question.
Okay,
Um
good.
yeah, I like what Shagam Trungpa is saying there. I remember when I first started dabbling in all of this, I thought, that there was some, like, oh, this path of liberation, also aka Hinayana, that, oh, that's this one thing over here, and then
Mm,
Mahayana is this other thing over here, and Vajrayana is this other thing, and they're all different interpretations, different sects, different whatever. And then I remember, I think it was one of the nuns at Sravasti Abbey. I think it was, I can't remember who. I was listening to a Dharma talk, and she was like, anyone who is saying like, well, you're not real Buddhist because, real Buddhist path, they do they whatever, they're this way or that way. She was like, look, we're doing all of them.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
If we're doing things right, we're actually practicing all of these jhanas at the same time.
Hmm. Yeah, and I don't think I've actually really heard of anyone who just does one. I mean, I think that there's
Hmm.
different, maybe different focuses. Like
Right.
Sarvasti Abbey, at least the teachings that they give to the community often are very kind of Hinayana,
Yeah.
Mahayana. Um, though they do talk about Vajrayana. So, but yeah, I really haven't seen someone talk about just one. So, um,
No.
it's interesting,
Uh,
but
and it appears even within our own. I remember Lama saying at one point, that even within our temple, right, within our sangha, that there are people practicing different yanas, right?
mm,
That are focused. There are people who are sort of primarily focused on self-liberation. There are others who are working on Mahayana, and others that have approached Vajrayana, right? So like, it's not that everybody is necessarily focused on the exact same aspect of the
yeah.
path. We're all
Well,
in
and maybe
different
we could
places.
break it. I was going to say maybe we could break it down a little bit for folks listening. And uh, there's a lot there's a lot to this, and I've been studying Dharma for like 6 years now. And I just now feel like I've got like kind of a good sense of what each of them are. So don't be kind of like turned away by all these big words where it's like it's kind of confusing what it is. It's actually really fascinating. So I encourage people to, do some research and also come to the temple and learn. But correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, or if you or just add to it if but Hinayana is what's considered the quote unquote lower vehicle, or where we're really focusing on kind of like ethical discipline. And we're also focusing on, I want to make sure that my next rebirth is a good one, like one where I can study the Dharma, I can meet my teacher, and continue the path. So a lot of focus on ethical discipline, precepts, and keeping good conduct. Um, and then Mahayana is like a next step, and that's where we're not just focusing on ourselves and our own liberation, but we're turning our view towards others, and actually recognizing that our own liberation is really connected with everyone else's liberation. And so we've decided to kind of step away from just thinking about kind of our own practice and our own ethical conduct and thinking about everybody else. And then Vajrayana is like, and this is where you might need to help me here, because sometimes it's hard for me to put into words, right? Because like it's both complicated and so simple. But like Vajrayana is this kind of like direct wisdom, right? It's kind of like um this what's known as like a really rapid, fast vehicle. And so it's kind of you're getting warned that it's like a little bit dangerous, right? Because it's like only so few people can really master the Vajrayana vehicle. Um but yeah, it's like this kind of clear wisdom mind, this immediate knowing. What would you add, Daniel, to any of
Oh
those,
my gosh. Oh
especially
my gosh.
Vajrayana?
No, no, I don't feel I actually, when I think about this,
I'm
I
not
often,
qualified, but yeah,
no,
that's
I don't
gender
feel
from
particularly
things.
qualified. I think that I actually reflect on this quite often where I wonder sometimes. I'm like, am I actually practicing Vajrayana? And it was interesting because it wasn't until fairly recently, I'd say it was actually after the last retreat, that I had some, was doing some practices and talking to Lama, and he was like, "Hey, all right, welcome. You're practicing Vajrayana," but but at the same time, definitely still working on the ethical, conduct and mindfulness practices. Hinayana is a some people consider it a derogatory term, right? Because
Because it's
it,
called lower.
yeah, sometimes
It's not.
lesser, um, and lesser in the sense that it doesn't mean like in a hierarchy, like one is better and one is worse. It's lesser, it's smaller, right? It's
Mhm.
the scope is
The
smaller
scope.
because it's also known as the path of like self liberation, right? I think that's what it's called sometimes, but like individual liberation, right? Where the scope is really about the practitioner, and so it's a lesser vehicle, right? It's just a
Yeah.
smaller boat, right? And then the Mahayana, of course, is much wider because it encompasses all beings,
The
right?
Bodhisattva
But
vows.
exactly. I think it even sometimes might be referred to as Bodhisattvayana or something like that.
Mhm.
And then Vajrayana, yeah, I it words I can't bring them together. I can't stitch enough words together
Yeah.
to describe it. I'm too new to it myself, and too uh my confusion abounds still.
Totally. Yeah, me too. No, and thanks. And I think it's good that we have a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
so
good place
much.
to be. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Good
Well,
advice for
good, good,
sure.
good.
Definitely want to stick with our mind training. Not just
That's right.
the Lojong slogans are wonderful, but the mind training is every second of every day and throughout the night, even when we're dreaming.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good reminder. As we kind of segue into our focus on negativity bias tonight, what you just shared reminded me that I have felt somewhat distant from from that Lojong encouragement to that the training is actually happening all the time, um, no matter what we're doing. And so I think with just how much I have on my plate, it's like my mind has kind of numbed out everything else, with which everything else is just everything, like I know that is what, we're training towards, is seeing all of this as the path. Um, and I have to say, I've felt distant from that in the last month or so. Um, And I do think that part of that is because of this tendency for me when I'm stressed to focus on the negatives, um,
Mm.
to focus on what's going wrong, what I have to fix, what I have to do to get to stable ground. um, and never feeling quite stabilized, or satisfied. So yeah, it's a topical thing for me. But I'm looking forward to talking about it tonight.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about it.
Great. Yeah.
What do you how do you define negativity bias?
Well, I think that for me, but I imagine for other people, it's this tendency to kind of, no matter what happens, what we tend to focus on more is the stuff that doesn't feel so great. So like, let's say, for example, just like kind of a silly example, you go on a first date with someone, it's going great, but then like you act like you bite into a cherry tomato and it like squirts, and it's like, oh, gross, kind of like embarrassing. What are you gonna think about when you go home that night?
Wait, is this did you have this experience?
No, I haven't, but I know someone who did. So
Okay, all right. It sounded oddly specific.
it is oddly specific. But it just popped in my mind because it's so like such a good example of like, hey, everything's actually like great, but
Yeah.
it's this one little detail that's like embarrassing, um,
Yeah.
that the person ended up like focusing on. Um, so it's kind of like that, where it's like,
Hmm.
actually a lot of what we're engaging with throughout the day is pretty neutral. And then there's even some positives, but like the stress is often what our minds will latch on to.
Yeah, well, Lama told me with the like I think it was like the first it was my very first darshan with him. He said all experience, all phenomena are inherently neutral.
Mm,
Right. So
hmm.
they're all of them with like there's none that are not neutral. And so
Wow.
the charge, the positive negative charge is coming from us, right?
Yep, for
And
sure.
so but I mean the negativity bias thing, it makes a lot of sense, right? So language, they say, is inherently negative, and the way we think and the way we communicate with each other is inherently negative for good
Wait,
reason.
say more about that. Yeah, that's curious. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it makes sense if you go back, if you imagine us as animals, right? And not so, not quite where we are now, right? Then it's much more important to communicate danger
Mm,
than it is pleasant, good, positive things, right? I, I was reading this great article by Dr. Rick Hansen. He specializes actually in negativity bias.
oh, cool.
Yeah, he wrote some books on it and some bestsellers and things like that. And he said two things that really kind of stuck with me. One of them being that it's much more important from an evolutionary perspective to dodge sticks than to chase carrots.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like because you get hit by a stick, or a jaguar or tiger or something is going to about to snatch you up. It's over. You're not going to get to, create more of your species or whatever, right? That's kind
Yeah.
of ends it. The other thing he was saying is as a result of this, the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones. And
Wow.
so they're more salient, the negative experiences are. And when we begin to like when we really look at our own direct experience, like what you're talking to, when we look at our relationships, when we look at society at large, when we look at the way media and advertising and all of that works, you begin to see like, oh, this negativity bias is prevalent, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that the social media algorithms are all engineered towards this negativity and sensationalism? And why do we have all these
Sure.
clickbait headlines and stuff like that, right? It's
Yeah.
because it generates interest, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if there's an article about like, somebody had cute puppies and here are pictures of the cute puppies, or Donald Trump is saying something about the Hitler and the master race, which one are you going to click on? Right? Like which
Probably both, but maybe the
yeah,
Donald Trump
okay.
one
Yeah,
first.
fair
Yeah.
enough, right? Like, I mean, but which one's gonna grab you? Which one has more pull?
Yeah.
Right? And not only that, but like, without going too far with the social media stuff, there's because engagement is a measure that is really, really, really important, engagement with the content. People are way more likely to comment on and to discuss and to share negative content. This is very well documented, very
Yeah.
well proven, right? And we know, like, if you look back on the newspaper days and yellow journalism and all of that, like, it's been prevalent all along. And so we're really latched on to this negativity stuff because
Yeah.
for some reason, like, it's just like we just are conditioned, right, to be that way.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I've always heard the kind of like maxim of like sex sells, which, you think that that's like a big positive, but when I think about it, like so much of the advertising that is like sex focused or, kind of yeah, like tempting or something, like there is a negativity around that that's like fear of missing out. Like fear of not being desirable enough,
Yeah,
right? Fear of not
yeah.
getting something that you desire,
That's right. That's
right?
right. a hundred
Um,
percent. Right. They're
yeah,
they're they're literally called within advertising fear appeals.
yeah,
Fear
wow,
appeals, right? So it's exactly that, like this fear of missing out and all of that. You're not gonna be accepted socially if you don't put this deodorant on or whatever, right? Yeah, you're gonna miss out on a good time if you don't go to this limited time event, that
yeah,
whatever. You're not gonna have the cool new iPhone and people are gonna make fun of your Android because so on and so it doesn't, like we could go on all day, right? Like
yeah,
it just doesn't stop. And so I think like it's so harmful to us because it distorts our worldview,
yeah,
right? And it can lead to stress, anxiety, just distortions in general, right?
yeah, for
Because
sure.
that's not, if things are inherently neutral, why would we want to charge things in this super negative way, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I there was this talk that Tara Brock gave. You know Tara Brock? Of
Oh
course.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic.
And
Yeah.
she said that she made the point. She said there's 10, reality consists of 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows, right?
Mm,
But for some reason, the sorrows are just more salient, right? And
for
we
sure.
gravitate
Yeah.
towards them.
Yeah. Well, some examples of that from my life right now. Uh, One is, that I'm going to be moving into a new house. We signed a lease a couple of months ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Um, that was one example of how it was like really focused on the negative, is that I just doing like all of this work, all of this effort to find a house, sign the lease, and then once the lease was signed, I was just like, ugh, like not even happy about it, like just
Oh,
stressed, and
yeah.
thinking about like, okay, now we're gonna have to like pack everything up and move. And we've been talking for years now about like wanting to get back over to that area. We have a lot of friends out there. There's more to do. It's beautiful. But now what I'm thinking about is like, oh, but I love the place I'm in right now. Like, even though it's like far away from everything, it's like on 10 acres and there's, flowers everywhere and it's perfect for my cat. And, so I'm only thinking about like, what are the things
Yeah.
I'm gonna miss now? Instead of like, well, wait a minute. No, here's all these good things that I'm looking forward to about this place, including that my new place is gonna be like a less than a 10-minute drive from where Rinpoche's new place is gonna be. So like, how could I be upset right now? Like it's just like when I actually, put it into words, it's like, oh, Jack, everything is incredible, actually. Like my good fortune is profound. Like I really, and I think this is essential for all Dharma practitioners, but I'm really going to be one of those practitioners where every day I think it's essential for me to be going over the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma, and also like the gradual path. So um, you know, really reflecting on, no, I have a precious human life.
Will you
Like
yeah, are you going to enumerate them?
I sure can. I can. So I have a precious human life. And not only is it like is it amazing that I am a human, but it's amazing that I have a teacher. I have someone who's teaching me the Dharma. Incredible, right? Um,
In very skillful ways.
in very skillful ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just the opening of my heart and just thinking about that, right? And the next one is that, well, and all of this is impermanent. My death is definite, but the time of death is most indefinite, and so that is it's so important for us to remember that. In addition, cause and effect, so the law of karma, all of my actions have results, and not just the negative ones, right? Because we're talking
Right?
about
Right?
negativity, guys.
Yeah.
So we tend to think karma, okay, everything's going to come back and bite us in the ass,
Yeah,
right? All
karma's
the
a
things.
bitch.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But actually, what about we think of like everything I'm doing is going to lead to this incredible future where I'm a Buddha and I'm liberating all beings. Like that is inevitable. Even like
Not only that, but your good fortune that led you to where you are now is a direct result of your positive actions as well.
exactly. Yeah. So thinking about that the law of karma, that we can't escape it, and for good, for good reason. Like we've done all of this incredible action to get here. And then the last one is that, samsara sucks, basically. That we will not get what we think that we want and need from the things that we think are going to bring us happiness in this world, that
Right.
actually just lead to suffering.
Yeah.
Um, so those are, yeah, the four thoughts. I think every day, every morning, I just need to be reflecting on those, because it sets the stage and it turns my mind towards what's actually important, rather than all these kind of like fixations that my mind gets stuck on around, like, well, what's going to happen here, and like, well, this doesn't feel right or perfect. It's like, actually, no. Like, you are so fortunate, and not just because you have a good job and a house. You are so
Right.
fortunate because you have this life where you are training in the Dharma. And that is it. That's it. That is the essential,
That's
point.
you're 100% right about that. The one thing I would say though is like I think it's pretty important to not adopt sort of like a Pollyanna outlook.
Oh,
Or
yes.
or
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So my I think I may have mentioned this in the past, but my brother who's a psychologist, he accuses me of being s- pronoic, right? We've talked about this, I think.
Remind me what that means.
So a paranoid person thinks everybody and everything is out to get them, right? But I've got pronoia. I think the entire world and everything is conspiring for my benefit,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So but here's the thing, right? That the road to happiness is actual like the reality itself, opening ourselves to reality as it is, which has these 10,000 joys, these 10,000 sorrows. Reality is that this experience has all of it. We don't need to get attached to it. We don't need to, develop aversion towards it or ignore it or any of that. Just be with what is. It turns out that what is it has all of these qualities to them, but for some reason we've developed these distorted lenses, these conditioned lenses that we view it all through, and it develops on top of itself, right? Like once you it's like a oyster or something, right? It just keeps growing more and more layers on top of it,
Mm,
right? And I think that the good news is that this is a conditioning. I mean, it may have been many, many lifetimes of conditioning. Who
yeah,
knows, right?
yeah.
Like, sure, and conditioning, self-conditioning, societal conditioning, all this, right? Yeah. But that which has been conditioned can be deconditioned or unconditioned or reconditioned. And I think that's where the mind training comes in, like watching it and
Yeah.
noticing, like, oh, hey, check that out. I just totally projected a negative something onto the situation, whatever that thing is, or onto a phenomenon. It turns out it's actually neutral, which means let me see, can I see it from another? Because, normally I don't think it's always healthy to do this, but almost always, some negative experience, there's something positive about it,
Mhm,
right?
for sure.
Even if it's not positive for you, right? Your loss might be somebody else's gain. Well,
Yeah.
good for them, right?
Yeah.
like and I don't like I really don't think it's healthy to overdo that, right?
Right. No, for sure. Because that
You
can
know,
be some spiritual bypassing
of
type
course.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're not like it's about getting correction, but not overcorrection in one way or the other. But
Right.
like I really like, just sitting with the like what is happening, like what's really actually happening here, mindfully approaching whatever it is, right? Like you were saying about your experience with moving, right? The truth of the matter is it's not all great. There is going to be some loss. Your
Yeah.
cat is not going to have the same life,
Yeah.
right? And so I know, right? And that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just true.
This
Yeah.
is true, right? It's not let's not ignore the fact, right? It's gonna change for him. And yeah, it's gonna be hard and stressful to pack all the boxes up and move and whatever. But at the same time, like, can we see some goodness in, oh well, I'm gonna, at the same time as I'm packing, I'm gonna be getting rid of a bunch of crap that I don't use.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Right. No,
Uh
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and you're moving towards new opportunities, and you're gonna get to live close to your teacher, and all of that. So, but like there's this like balancing act that has to happen. But
Right.
sometimes I think maybe a little bit of it's not overcorrection, but like just reducing the emphasis intentionally a little bit on the negative, and just adding a little bit of the positive in there,
Right.
right? Like people talk
Yeah.
about like gratitude journals and things like that. That's super.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's always about like you're touching on that not too tight, not too loose.
That's right,
There's always
exactly.
this balance that we have to be playing with. I'm also curious too, this concept of all phenomena being neutral. I know we've only got 5 minutes, and I think that's a pretty big topic. That I'd like to dive into. Um, because I'm kind of curious, like I feel like sometimes I almost gravitate towards negative thinking. There's some way that it's kind of stimulating or
Mm.
activating or
It
even
is.
like motivating in a way, right? It's
It
like,
is.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so what does that mean for us to actually realize, like, well, it's neutral. Like, am I just worried that I'm going to be bored with reality, or like, so I'm curious about that, like the neutral thing.
Well, this touches on what we talked about previously, which is this neutral is somewhat peaceful, right?
Yeah,
And there's this perhaps an aggression, a mild aggression towards peace.
yeah,
For a variety of reasons, partially because that correction, it can be a little uncomfortable, right? And saying like, oh, that person who cut me off in traffic, I had this experience. Okay, I know I talk about traffic a lot. Dude,
it's
okay, so
relevant to all of
this
us.
is
So
I know, but
yeah,
okay, get this. So I'm taking my daughter back from school today. We're driving down the road, and this car goes flying past me, and it nearly hits a car in front of me, weaves in between two cars like it's gonna like go in between them, and I was just like, oh my God, what a crazy, like I don't like I immediately projected this insane like young person who's driving this car and they were
Right.
racing other people and had complete callous disregard for other people's lives and all that. And then I look over at my daughter and I was like, but strange that you're driving like a Jeep SUV. That's not a car you normally associated with like young, callous drivers or whatever. Like it just doesn't, it's not, it was, we were both like, that's kind of a weird car to have doing that, right? Like the
Yeah.
driver, like, so I pulled up next to him. I just looked over. I wanted to see so badly what kind of a jerk this was. It was an elderly couple.
Yeah.
It was they were it when the and you could tell like she was upset with him. He had probably not been paying attention, driving too fast, didn't see the cars, and then when he saw them too late, he like slammed on his brakes and tried to avoid them. And so in that sense, like whatever my story was that I'd projected onto the situation, which was incredibly negative, all of a sudden seeing these two old people there in the car, I realized like, oh, it's not what I think it is, right? Like, it doesn't have to be overcorrecting and saying like it was all beautiful and positive and wonderful, but like
Right,
it
right.
just is what it is. It was not, like it is. Is it a neutral experience? Yeah, actually, absolutely. From the perspective of a bird flying overhead, it was completely neutral. It didn't
Yeah.
matter, right?
Right, right, right.
But
Yeah,
it mattered
it's
to
all
me,
context, right? It's all
right?
context.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, well, yeah, so this has been a really fascinating discussion, and I feel like one thing I'm gonna try and commit to is a little bit of, can I this week practice like a little bit of a return to a beginner's mind? Because I
Mm,
feel like the beginner's mind, and when I reflect on my first like year or two training in the Dharma, it was almost like I really kind of welcomed these moments of like intensity, where it was like,
yeah.
okay, wow, let's see what this is, and like, practice some Dharma. And so I think there's a little bit of uh where I need to get some of that curiosity back.
I
And I
like
think it's
it.
there still, but
Yeah, I like it. I think that's a
yeah.
great plan. You know what I'm gonna do, Jack?
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to hear.
I'm good. So I'm while you practice greater sort of beginner's mind, I'm going to do something that Tenzin Choki has mentioned in the past, which is
Mm,
I'm gonna really try to savor the okay. Because like we've been talking about, the happy, the goodness, it's not always so titillating, it's not always so big, and it's not always so grabby, right?
yeah,
Sometimes it's really simple, like somebody doing us a little favor or just like enjoying a good pineapple or something like that, right? And it's okay. It's not like mind bending, right? Like, oh, it's amazing stuff. But like if we can really be present with it, if I can for between now and the next time we talk, really be present with those moments and just savor the okayness, I
yeah,
think that the goodness, the beauty, the positive will become a lot more clear.
yeah. I think so too. Because yeah, when we do savor the okay, we actually recognize just how much is all around us,
Yeah.
just how much okayness, and like kind of, you know, it's a little magnificent. And just realize,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
this is
Yeah,
pretty
ba
okay. This is pretty
exactly.
okay.
Exactly. Basic goodness abounds,
Yeah,
and we can open up to it.
hell yeah. Well, my friend, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for chatting with me, and for everyone listening. We love y'all, and thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody. Bye.